Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Play On podcast. In this bit, me and Luke are going to have a look at the Hurling Qualifier, which took place between Clare and Wexford. Clare winning by 3 points, 2 goals and 25 points to Wexford's 2-22. In my opinion, Clare were the better team on the day. A very intense rivalry, but Clare get the better this time.
Yeah, I think Clare were the far better team, and I suppose a late kind of consolation goal from Sheehan kind of put a bit more respectability on the scoreline, brought it back to 3 points, where probably wasn't an accurate representation of the game. And pretty impressive from Clare. I thought they have a lot of positives for them to take from it, and a few aspects that they know that they'll be able to improve on. So I think it puts them in a good shape going forward, and they overcame what could have been potentially a tricky game, but they did so relatively comfortably as well, I'd say.
Yeah, I thought it was definitely a fiery game. And, that's always going to be the case with Lohan and Davy in charge. But one thing that I don't think we should be surprised by when you have one of the best fullbacks that has ever played the game of hurling in charge of his team, Lohan has managed to put together a really, really solid defence there in Clare.
Yeah, look, I thought, I think particularly kind of, you're looking at as a unit, kind of, it's probably been a nearly unsung kind of collection of players. Like, you look particularly the full back line. The full back line were unbelievable, I thought, the weekend. And you're looking at Rory Hayes, Conor Cleary, and Paul Flanagan, none of which are probably mentioned half as much as they should be. Like, you look at the weekend as well. Like, Rory Hayes that was one of the best cornerback performances I've seen in a long time. The energy he kind of brought to it. I think in particular his score. He looked at that where he came absolutely flying out of defence and ran out in front of a Wexford man who was waiting for the ball, picked it off clean and knocked it straight over the bar. And he was rightfully man of the match. And then beside him, Conor Cleary just won a ridiculous amount of high ball in on top of him. Every single long ball came in, he dealt with straight away. And he's kind of quietly positioned himself as probably the most underrated fullback in the country. He never seems to make mistakes, and he's kind of watertight defender as well. And then Paul Flanagan as well is kind of, he's nearly won an elder statesman without kind of even playing championship before. And so what a find he's been. So, I think I really like kind of that Clare base. And, there's definitely kind of an air solidity about them. So, it's a huge positive.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for sure David McInerney has to start for Clare because, his return, whenever he comes on, he's just, he's such a solid, reliable performer, and the quality he has, he can slot in anywhere. He's played midfield, centre back, full back, corner back, wing back, and wherever he plays, he's a class player.
Yeah, look, we've seen it kind of the last few games that he's came in quite early for Paddy Fitz and at wing back, and I think that'll be a starting change next week. I think Paddy Fitz is he's struggled a little bit in the last couple of games. Championship's gone on after a great league campaign, but I'd fully expect McInerney to be back in half back line, and that's just going to strengthen the team even more. So I think they're the clear kind of positives for Clare as well. And then you kind of look at the other end of the field, that probably the quietest Tony Kelly game we've seen in a while. He scored 2 from play, 9 in total, but he wasn't really in the game that much. So but in his absence, I suppose, kind of the other lads kind of stood up. In particular, Ryan Taylor with 3, Brady with 3, and Aidan McCarthy with 3. They were all really, really good as well. And then Aaron Shanahan was a constant live wire in there as well. He scored 2 points in full forward, and it caused all sorts of problems as well for Wexford. So it's last year there was kind of accusations that they were a bit of a one-man team, and they're certainly proven now that is absolutely not the case, and that they have plenty of forwards other than Kelly that are well able to step up and win games for them.
Yeah, another forward who definitely is pushing for a start as well as Mark Rogers. We talked about him in the Tipperary game when he came on. He looked like a real live wire, and he put in another good performance. Yeah,
I think that'll be an interesting one now to see whether he starts next week, because on ability-wise, he probably is good enough to start. Maybe I think a few people might have thought he would have started ahead of Ryan Taylor the weekend, but Ryan Taylor was exceptional, and he can probably be dropped after that performance as well. Mark Rogers came on for Ian Galvin, who was probably one of his quieter games, but Ian Galvin gets through a huge amount of work out around the field. So, I think the Clare will probably go with the same line kind of for the next time. the next day out against Cork, I think you'll see really Aidan McCarthy and Ian Galvin in the half-forward line with Shanahan, Kelly and Taylor inside. And I think then they have the likes of Mark Rogers come on, and then like Gary Cooney came on and scored a goal as well. So look, there's certainly options there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like that crop of youngsters that Clare had coming through, the second wave, if you like, after their All Ireland under 21 winning. These guys are coming through. The likes of Aidan McCarthy is definitely spearheading that generation. And Lohan is definitely the man to mix them in, and he's creating a really, really exciting team. And, I love watching Clare play. Every game they're in seems to be a cracker. And this game was no different. As for Wexford, they'll be very, very disappointed with the start that they had. One positive was Cathal Dunbar. He looked very, very good. He hit 5 points. Obviously we're in the aftermath of Wexford losing their second game in a row and being knocked out of the All Ireland Hurling Championship of 2021. It is clear to me, just looking at their performances this year compared to last year, it is clear to me that they put in a hell of a lot of training. They worked very, very, very hard. And the sad thing is that if the game was played 10 years ago, Wexford's, season would have completely changed. I'm looking back at the Conor MacDonald goal, that turned out to be given as a point instead. And that led to the game being taken to extra time, against Kilkenny. And then Kilkenny went on to win. If they had won that game, they would have played Dublin, and a very weakened Dublin by, obviously the COVID absentees and Owen O'Donnell's injury. They would have played Dublin in the Leinster final. I would have backed them to beat Dublin, and then they would have been into an All-Ireland semi-final. But the way that their season just took a different path, I don't think you can blame the players. I think they put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah, look, well, there's no scenario that this is like where you can kind of understate how talented this group of players are. Like, some of the players are ridiculously good, and they've had some really, really good days kind of with Wexford. And look, I think they just came up against a Clare team at the weekend. They're absolutely flying at the moment. And I know they were absolutely awful in the first half, which is surprising kind of from a Davy team to be so kind of stale. And that how much they found themselves down, like 10 points down at the water break. So it was just a bizarre kind of start. And you'd wonder maybe if they started a little bit kind of, well, if they started at all, I suppose, in the first 15 minutes, maybe they could have been more in the game. But I think they just came up against a better Clare side of the day. And I think that I think there's no shame in losing to Clare. And I think Clare are going to go quite far in the championship this year.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And this is the point that I was saying to you when we initially spoke about Davy and Wexford, is that I was saying, Davy's going to get a lot of stick now, and Davy's going to, mention about, he hasn't, achieved as much as he should with this Wexford team. I actually think he's overachieved with this Wexford team, because the reality is that if you're talking about, them aiming to win All Ireland titles, when you look at the players that Wexford have and you look at the players that Limerick have, in my mind, there's no comparison.
Yeah. Well, I think that's absolutely the case. And winning Leinster's was a huge deal for Wexford. And look, Davy did manage to bring that from a few kind of barren years. He got them to being at a stage where they could consistently kind of expect to beat Kilkenny to compete for Leinster. So look, that was a huge thing. But results haven't been good, to be honest, now for a while now. So you look back kind of this year, they had the one win over Laois. They lost to Kilkenny. They've lost to Clare. Last year, they lost both their games, one to Galway, one to Clare. And then the year before that, they lost the semi-final to Tip. But before that, they won the Leinster final. But to get into the Leinster final, they drew 3 games and won 1. So they haven't been absolutely the results haven't been really good, and they've kind of stumbled their way to these kind of titles a little bit lately. So so maybe that's kind of why there is increased kind of pressure on Davy. And they haven't been anywhere probably near their peak for a while now. And you can kind of see there's a bit of angst in the media. People are kind of coming for him a little bit. And I just think it's I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of the last we see of Davy in Wexford.
Yeah, and I think it was definitely, a fascinating project to pair, Wexford's enthusiasm and this new team, that was on the block, and the new players that they had, and the likes of Lee Chin, who was a real face of this team and a real marketable player for Wexford and for the GA itself. And, they played a real swashbuckling, heart on your sleeve type of hurling, which every fan loves to see. And, Davy's passion as well on the sideline, and the fact that Davy loves being the underdog, that paired so well with Wexford. And that's why they were such a fairy tale when they won the Leinster Championship. But not to be harsh on Wexford, to play devil's advocate, that was the year in Leinster where Galway were coming to the end of the Micheál Donoghue era, and Galway got knocked out of the championship by Dublin, who ended up getting knocked out by Laois. And Kilkenny were going through their transition phase under Brian Cody, and they were there to be beaten. Wexford beat them, and credit to them for doing that. But even in that semi-final against Tipperary, when I look back at that game, Tipperary had 3 goals ruled out. And I remember Liam Sheedy absolutely losing his head at the third time that a goal was ruled out for Tipperary. And still, Wexford, they had that moment. Like, I was in Croke Park, I was watching that game. They had that moment where Lee Chin, got the ball, dribbled a little bit with it, and then, buried it into the bottom corner. And I was thinking, the way that the ground just erupted, I was thinking that's the moment where Wexford might kick on and get to the promised land, because it's the face of their team. It's the face of the whole image that they've tried to create around this team, who's just stood up and been a captain and buried a goal at a crucial time when they are the underdog, which they love being. And ever since that moment, it has gone downhill for Wexford. They've never hit that peak. They faded away rapidly in that game after that Leach-in goal. Tipperary clawed them back and ended up beating them. And ever since then, they've never got back to that level. But I don't think that they will. I think that the magic that was initially around this team, Davy's cycle, this is the bit where it comes to an end. And if it does, I've enjoyed it. I think they play very entertaining hurling. The passion that Davy and Wexford create is brilliant. And if he stays, I'd definitely be interested to watch them next year.
Yeah, look, you just kind of see kind of figures in the media kind of starting to speak out on it more and stuff as well. Like, there was the Paul Galvin tweet, which was like seemed a bit ridiculous and stuff like that. And but there's just kind of there's a bit of kind of I don't know. There's nearly a sense that this is kind of coming towards an end, and yeah, it's turning a bit bitter now and everything as well. And it's kind of sad to see after what kind of had so much promise for a while, that for it to kind of turn this kind of bitter. And yeah, I just think it is naturally kind of petering out a little bit. I know the players still have huge respect for him, so look, it'll be up to them if they want him to stay on. That might be a factor in them doing so, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him go now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he went as well. I think this is the time when Davy usually does step away from a team. And, if he did, do you think that the players are there for another manager to come in and kind of, potentially push for an All Ireland with them?
I don't think an All Ireland. No, I think. Look, I think on their day, Wexford they can definitely push for Leinster. They can compete with the Leinster teams, and on their day, they can probably beat any of them. But yeah, look, they're not in the same league as Limerick right now, and I don't think they're in the same league as Tip either. So look, I think they've some good young players, like Rory O'Connor's still very, very young, but yeah, I don't think I wouldn't probably consider them All Ireland contenders, no matter who comes in.
Yeah, that's my point about, Davy, is that, he is a very divisive figure, and he seems to be a type that you either love him or you hate him. And I feel like, the knives are out for him as soon as it stops going well for him. And I think he needs to be respected for the fact that he has squeezed his team for every bit of talent that they've got.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, so that is our review of the Wexford versus Clare game, and our review of the whole Davy year, really, in charge of Wexford. I hope anyway that it continues, because I think that they're a great pair, they're a great match, and they bring a bit of entertainment to the championship. Don't forget to look at all our other match reviews, and take care.